Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for yet another session of the We Champion series that is hosted by Mission 4.7. As most of you know, Mission 4.7 is a network of different organizations that are very like-minded and that promote transformative education. Just so you know, we will be recording the session. If you're not comfortable being on camera, you can go ahead and turn off your camera. And also we will be uploading this video to our YouTube channel so you can access it later. So if you know of someone that maybe couldn't make it because of the time, then you can send the link as well. A little bit more about the format of this particular session. We're going to do a Q&A. I have a set of questions for both our authors that are joining us today. And hopefully we can get more questions from the audience as well. If you're part of the audience and you want to ask a question, you can either write it on the chat or you can raise your hand and we'll get to you. Without further ado, I want to introduce both Dr. Patricia Michelle and her son Gabriel. They are the authors of the Antidotes Solution, which is the first book in a series of lively science adventures about a group of middle school girls and boys who join forces to fight pollution and make the world a better place. I'm going to go ahead and leave the floor to you for you to introduce yourself, and then we can jump into the questions. Please go ahead.
I'm Gabriel Schaefer, and it's an honor to be here.
Thanks, sweetheart. And I'm Patty Michelle, and my background is in global public health, and I've been working in global health now for over 25 years in more than 40 countries, and have been wanting to write children's books for almost my entire life, and only just started doing it in the last few years. So really excited to be here to talk about this particular book, because it was a collaboration that started at the very beginning of the pandemic with Gabriel.
Just so everyone knows, the book is out. It's been out since October 4th, and you can get it on Amazon. If you're interested, please go ahead and do so. It's a very, very good book. But let's jump into the questions. Can you both tell us a little bit more about the book? Like anything that comes to mind?
So the book is about these middle schoolers who have to stop a future pandemic right after another pandemic that just happened. And then they're a group of kids stopping a future pandemic, and then they have to stop a company from dropping too much plastic into the ocean, which is making fish sick, which is spreading to humans. And
Yeah. And so the book follows Gear and Izzy and their friends as they discover that the Chesapeake Bay has this plastic eating bacteria experiment that has gone wrong, that is releasing a toxin that is making the fish and the kids sick. And so they form the Antidotes and apply basic public health and science and technology to stop this this future global crisis.
Oh, my mic was off. Sorry. I wanted to know this Zoom meetings and interviews and everything. What was your inspiration behind it? And can you tell us a little bit more about your experience writing it together?
okay, this is my mom's part.
Sure. So when I was in sort of the start of my career in global health, I spent some time in South Sudan. And while I was there, there was an outbreak of an unknown illness. And I worked with a team of young people to help do a door-to-door survey to map out the illness. And in the end, the World Health Organization and the CDC ended up using the data that these young people who were between the ages of 10 and 16, but they could speak both English and Dinka. So they could go around to the households and actually collect this information and understand what was going on. And so they ended up, mapping out this disease. The CDC and WHO used the maps to then really quickly identify that it was relapsing fever, which was caused by a parasite and could quickly be like contained by doing like a few very basic public health interventions. And so we ended up writing a children's book, actually, and going around to the schools to educate everyone about what to do if they had folks in their households that were kind of suffering from this idea. And so that was sort of like the original inspiration. But then the more immediate inspiration was at the very start of the pandemic. I was joking with Gabriel that we wouldn't be in this situation if kids were in charge. And so we started brainstorming ideas around what a situation like this could look like if kids were in charge. And I think one of the things that really impacted me and struck me was, even as we were collaborating on the story, is that unlike adults, like kids genuinely care about each other, and they care about the issues, and they also really like science. They haven't been, and so, as we were kind of like mapping out the different parts of the story, it was a lot of fun because to me, it was like the ultimate dream from a public health perspective, because so much of public health depends on everybody coming together and individuals taking actions that then can help protect the general population. And so that's where some of the thinking came behind this book. And then, do you want to tell her about the process in writing the book? Because that was something that you were very actively involved in.
So we started out with like the base ideas, and we used sticky notes to chart them. So in different color sticky notes for different things. So like pink sticky notes would be characters, and then orange sticky notes would be settings. And we put the sticky notes on that window. And then we came up with the base ideas, and then we came up with the plot. And then that's how it got started.
Yeah. And then as we would like write, as I would write different chapters of the book, I would test them out with Gabriel. And so and originally I was thinking that he was just going to be my target audience and test out ideas, but in the end he had much more strong opinions about the characters and the story, and what would work and what would really not work. And so there were a lot of times where Gabriel would look at me and say things like, what would you say to me?
You're doing it wrong.
You're doing it wrong.
That is amazing. Oh my God. We have a program at CSD and with Mission 4.7 that's Eco Ambassadors, and it's usually with children that are in middle school. And we learn so much from them. Like I completely see where you're coming from. And I feel like since it's your son, he's gonna be very honest about how it doesn't work, which is probably really good for the book. So that's amazing. But yeah, I totally see where you're coming from, of like children just being completely like in charge of their own narrative in a way that adults sometimes underestimate. And it's very interesting once you like let them uh give their opinions and let them like kind of guide you in that road. But that is, did you have any fights, Gabriel, about like what should go in the book and what should be cut?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Oh yeah. And he's still a little upset about something that we ended up having to cut from the book that he was very excited about in the original book. So yeah, there were definitely some moments of tension and
some creative differences in the
yes.
process.
Well, yeah,
Which makes sense.
really
I think
that's a really good way to phrase it. Creative differences.
I feel that for the next one, Gabriel, you have one in your court. If something was cut, then now you can cut something from the next book, or you can put something
Right.
that you get that now. Like you earn that right. What do
Yeah.
you hope that the readers take away from the book, like when reading it?
I think, and first I want to say I don't think this is just for like people in middle school. I think anybody can read this book and take something from it. But what our goal was for people to take from it was like, don't just sit there, like do something. You shouldn't just be there sitting down while you know that something outside is happening, that you can do something about it. And we want people to realize that they can do something and anybody can do something about it. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, like for kids, I think what often happens is kids are sort of viewed as you know, beings that we need to care for and nurture, etc., and not necessarily as individuals that have a significant contribution to make. And so what we wanted to do through the book was to inspire kids and teachers and parents that kids have an incredible and a very important role to play in addressing different types of issues, and including, in retrospect, looking at the pandemic, there was a lot of things that we could have better engaged children to take on and to support, and we really didn't. And then at the same time, children were probably the most affected by the pandemic, and we still don't have a full appreciation of the full effects of the pandemic on children. And so we wanted a way, to inspire kids and the grown-ups that care for them, and to know that they have a role to play. And a lot of the science that and technology that we include in the book are things that like kids can do, and actions that kids can take. And so we wanted it to kind of be designed in a way that was realistic and that is relevant for right now. And so we see this huge spread of plastic, and I wasn't even aware of this until we started this book, because I was just looking for a public health issue that we could kind of look at. And then when we started to look at climate and public health, and then we kind of zeroed in on this sort of plastic eating bacteria, when I started to do the research on plastic, I, as somebody who is like relatively aware and etc., had no idea that it takes hundreds of years to break down a single plastic water bottle that we use for like 5 seconds. And so to me, it was also very eye-opening for my own, as I was kind of like working my way through the process. But that there are actions that, kids and families, and schools can take that can help like ease some of the burden on the planet and on the environment, but then also things that kids can be doing to understand basic public health issues like water quality by testing their water. And we know that clean water is essential to good health. But we're also seeing, huge challenges with clean water across different environments. And so, yeah.
Since we're in the subject of water, it is set on a local water source, the book, but touches on global issues about plastic and health. It does a great job of hitting many of the SDGs. Do you think the book will read differently for those who know about the SDGs versus those who don't? Or do you think that experience can be more or less the same?
What do you think?
I think that for the people that know what they are, it will affect them a little more just because they are fully aware of these things that are happening already. So.
Yeah. But we didn't write it. I mean, I think it's interesting because I did kind of like a retrospective analysis on the book and the SDGs. And even though I work a lot on the SDGs in my day job, I did not necessarily set out to address, a lot of the SDGs when we wrote the book, but more to like address just really important issues. And so, we do take on in the book girls in STEM and trying to increase kind of like diversity in STEM and really showing what diversity looks like with the different characters kind of coming together, forming the antidotes and having to learn to lean into their differences and their different contributions to the solution. We also kind of took on an animal human health challenge, which, we're seeing more and more of. The COVID-19 pandemic started out with bats and then ended up, leading to a disease that impacts humans. And so it was really more of like a reflection on kind of like what's happening in the world. And then, which I think the SDGs do a very nice job of really looking at, okay, like what are the things that we need to do to ensure a healthier planet and live, better quality lives. And I think that's something that we set out to do in the book in a way that was more hopeful and optimistic than sometimes like if you watch the news and whatever, listening and reading about these issues, you could get really, really sad and frustrated at kind of the state of the world. But we wanted to create, a book where like kids could see themselves and they could be hopeful that there are things that like can be done to start to address some of these big issues.
And I have to agree. But yeah, I mean, that's mainly what the book is set to be.
Yeah.
It also does a great job, as you said, of delivering that information, but in a more manageable way for someone that's reading it. And like you said, maybe a little bit overwhelmed about news and everything else that's around, that it gets a little overwhelming. So this is a very good way of like delivering that information in a way that is more understandable for each person in the audience, not necessarily just middle schoolers, but a lot of us are overwhelmed with everything around us. And and we could use a more digestible way of like seeing what is our position and what we could do in a manageable way.
Yeah. And I think storytelling does that in a nice way, where you can kind of look at different issues and build characters and stories around those issues. And I do think fiction is a nice way to start conversations or trigger conversations around some of these issues. And so we definitely can see, the book being used in different like book clubs and school programs, but even like with parents and their kids to spark conversations about different types of issues that we're facing in society. Yeah.
Which leads me perfectly to my next question, which is, what is your advice for people that want to create their own content, especially for the urgent issues of our time? And how can especially youth go about getting started in creative writing and storytelling?
Yeah.
Well, first, I want to say that how we got started was my mom, because first we were joking around about how if kids were in charge, they could make a difference. They really could. And then she also wanted to write a fiction book for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And she tried when she wrote about school shootings, and everyone walked up to her and said, "You're a great writer. You write great things, but no. Don't."
Write about something different. And so we did, so I took that to heart. I still might go back to that book about school shootings and pick it back up and see it to it was a young adult novel that I had started about a year before the pandemic and had been working on. But since we wrote this book, we've had a number of kids come to us, like friends' kids, who are like, "I want to write a book," and so we've started a little writing club for kids to write their stories, and so each of them has their kind of own ideas of what they want to write about. Gabriel has his story that he wants. It's an apocalyptic story.
Always a great
So
subject to write about.
He's going straight to the edge, and so yeah. Do you want to tell them a little bit about what you're writing about?
My book is about a bunch of issues that we're on the edge of. Like, we're on the edge of a pandemic taking over and just destroying everyone, and then we're on the edge of climate change because that's getting a lot worse, and we're also on the edge of world war. So I feel like my story is about a world war happens, nuclear war happens, and then all the war machines and factories that are building the machines makes climate change worse. And then when we have those other things to worry about, we completely forget about the pandemic that is happening, and then that eventually gets to us. And then eventually everybody on Earth dies.
A little spoiler alert, because he already told us how the book ends, but yeah, that sounds amazing, actually.
So, and he wants to, we had this huge argument about this book a few weeks ago, because he wants to write it as an adult for adults. And he's like, if you can write a book as an adult for kids, then why can't I, as a kid, write a book for adults as a kid?
That's a valid point.
And so this is his writing project.
I'm looking forward to it. That
And
sounds
I
amazing.
think it's a warning. I think it is, this is the view that kids are seeing the world through, and they're seeing these things happen, and this is the direction that things are going. And it's a little sad that that's like what it's a little sad to me that that's the story that he wants to write, but I get why that's the story that he wants to write, because so much of what
clearly
being exposed to is like exactly that.
Exactly. No, I see it too. So what was your favorite part about working in this book, Gabriel?
Well, honestly, my favorite idea taken out of the book.
He's still a little mad about that.
He's not gonna let it go, and he shouldn't.
So that was really sad.
Yeah.
And then my second favorite idea of the book was also taken out because that was within my first favorite idea of the book.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that I feel like I like the plot, even though it isn't what I originally chose. It's still a good story. As the business owner is throwing plastic in the water, which is leading to human deaths because of the fish getting into disease and humans.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Some of my favorite bits of the book are the real funny bits. And so I think that, and they came out of just kind of random conversations that we would have during the pandemic when we would walk our pandemic puppy, whose name is Mahfouz, after the Egyptian Nobel Prize winning writer. And so so we would take Mahfouz on these walks, and things like when he would do his business on the trees or on whatever, we came up with the idea for like a video game called P Revolution, which, the dogs kind of try to take over the neighborhood, and they each mark their territory, etc. But, and so we mentioned that in the book. We mentioned P Revolution in the book. But the idea of the video game actually, and creating a video game or having one of the characters create a video game that the kids could all play together around the world collaboratively to help show how, they were reducing their plastic use, and they could, report on, cases of illness and report on water quality, was inspired by that kind of like initial like video game conversation that came out of like our walk with Mahfouz, which was really funny. And now he's actually working on learning how to code and things he might want to create. P Revolution to start. I think the Antidotes game is a little bit too complicated, but I think P Revolution could be programmed.
That's a great idea. And I know that you're planning on continue writing books for this series. When can we expect another book? Are you already working on it? Are you gonna take some time to work on your solo projects and then get back together? What are we thinking?
To multitask, by working on my solo project and working on the next book. But the next book is about the same kids working on technology, because AI is starting to get aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have to stop using screens and do a bunch of things to help.
Yeah, so the next book, so we've actually started the next book and we're aiming to get it out around the same time that this
Next year?
one came out next year.
Oh,
And so have it sort of like each year do another in the series. And so
yeah.
this next book, the working title is Masters of Technology. And so there's a rogue algorithm that starts to expose the Antidotes search information, and they have to become more critical users of technology. And so right now, unfortunately, the way that technology is going, it's largely unregulated. Nobody's really paying attention to the information that kids are being exposed to. And then kids don't know what to do with all the information that they're being exposed to. So they're being exposed to everything from, online bullying and strangers interacting with them, and also just being fed information that, to kind of push them in a direction or not in a direction. And so so we're seeing a lot more, unfortunately, things like, depression in girls and boys. And so this book is really meant to like help kids kind of take control of technology. And so before technology masters them, they become the masters of technology. And so so teaching critical thinking skills and approaches for technology, for
That
like
sounds amazing.
responsible citizenship in
Yeah.
technology.
Responsible use of tool that is getting a little out of hand.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's amazing. That sounds great. I have one last questions for both of you. What is the most valuable lesson you learned when writing this book?
Lesson that we learned. Well, I think that we learned that kids can do something. Like grown-ups tell us that, like, they're practically, they don't say this out loud, but they're practically saying you can't have a major role until you're over 18, which, like, I think is not true, because they try to keep us away from these problems because they don't think we can help, but I do think that kids can make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is the biggest lesson in writing this, is that there are so many ways that kids can be more actively engaged in both understanding the problems, but also just being creative about coming up with the solutions to the problems, and then mobilizing, and working together to address big problems and big challenges. I think we underestimate children and young people, and I think we should start having these conversations and start thinking about ways that, as families, as classrooms, as communities, we can support kids to work alongside grown-ups to address some of these big challenges.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you both so much. Like I mentioned before, and we learned through our Eco Ambassador program, children have this ability of thinking outside the box and of like being so caring and empathetic that I think that adults could really learn from them.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so we're excited for, to get as many kids and as many grownups to read the antidotes, to become antidotes, and join the community and start having, some of these conversations.
This is amazing. Yeah. We're looking forward to like a series of, let's hope, a lot of books.
Yeah.
And I also want to read the Apocalypse book. I'm not gonna lie, I was very interested in the plot. That sounds amazing. Congratulations to you both. The work you're doing is amazing, and I love the fact that Gabriel is so involved in the project, that he could give you that insight of how to reach people his age as well.
Yeah, me too. It's been a lot of fun, and he's a really good writing collaborator.
Very critical, but very, very, very good.
But very good.
Exactly. I don't know if there's any questions from anyone in the audience right now. If there are, if you want to put them in the chat or maybe raise your hand, we'll give it like a minute if you have any questions. I don't want to keep you the entire afternoon. I'm sure that you have plenty of things to do, both of you. But yeah, I am honored to have you as guest. This was amazing. And Gabriel, whenever you speak, I'm like very much impressed. And I think about like how you can be this young and this insightful, and how much you're gonna accomplish throughout your life. And it's just really amazing to hear. And I wish you the best. I'm sure you're gonna be a really good, well, you already are a good author, but I'm sure that you're gonna put up way more books.
Yeah. Thanks, Jasmine.
Oh, there we go. We have a question from him. For teachers who may want to use this book in class or school, are there any pointers or tips you have for them, or on how this can be used?
Yes. So we're planning to develop a book club guide for teachers to use the book in classrooms. And so really excited to have that come out in the next few months. But you can, I mean, the way that a lot of teachers are using similar books is to organize book clubs around them. I think it works best for both English language arts teachers to use it with classes, as well as science teachers, I think, can use it. And there are experiments in the book that can be done in a classroom setting or at home.
That sounds great. That's amazing. Okay, so Haynes says, that's a great idea. Thank you, and congrats to you both. Thank you so much again for joining us, and thank you for everyone that was able to connect. As you know, we're going to be uploading this to our YouTube channel, so it's going to reach a lot more people, and I will be sharing that link with you as soon as it's up there. But Dr. Michelle, thank you so much. Gabriel, thank you so much for your time. This was amazing.
Thanks, everyone. Mahfouz is even very enthusiastic as well about this.
He was mentioned. He's a big part of the story as well.
He is. He's like, why am I not on the screen?
You should be in camera next time.
Yes. Take care. Thanks, Jasmine.
Take care. Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.